Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I will call it to order here at 3:05 under Albemarle County's most recent continuity of government ordinance. We are meeting here in a hybrid format with some members attending in person and some remotely. Thank you all for being here. We'll start at the top of the agenda today. Sorry for that. Minutes from the previous meeting. Did we all have a chance to look those over? Do we have a motion to approve? Do we usually do that? I forget. Okay, yes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Aye.
Moving on, announcements and public comment. I know we have a couple public comments here on the agenda. David, did you have any particular order you wanted to take that?
Well, we know somebody's waiting here, so should we start in the room?
I always like to start with in person. Thank you very much. Would you like to stand up and take the floor? If you could introduce yourself.
Yes, can I remove my mask for this or?
Yes.
before I leave?
Sure, yes.
My name is Buck Smith. I'm a resident of the Keswick area. I'm also president of the Seaville Pride Community Network. And I'm here because friends in the Crozet area told me that they had heard there was some controversy about a Zoom class of drag queen makeup. And that they were upset that there were people who were basically feeling, they were afraid that the library is going to be, I don't want to say punished, but people were going to feel that they needed to object to it. I'm basically here to speak in favor of it. One, it is a voluntary Zoom event. Second is I can speak as a gay man growing up. To have had a activity where you could explore just the creative side of you would have been a very life-changing event. You know, the children enjoy playing makeup, putting on different personas. This type of event basically will allow them to explore just creative options. And so I think it's something that is really good for the library to do. We're very happy that the library is doing it, and we strongly support continuing having programs like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Okay, we had another online, I believe.
If anybody who is an attendee would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand function. If you're on Zoom, you can use the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, which I don't think anybody is, you can hit *9. So if you'd like to make a comment, now's the chance to raise your hand to make a comment.
Okay. No hands up.
And then I can see.
All right, well, moving on our agenda, we have a continuing education item. I asked for this one specifically with our annual trustee evaluation coming up, and we'll have some more discussion on that on a future agenda item here, but I thought this one might be a useful one to start with. It is part of a larger series of these video presentations that cover a wide range of material. If we find this one useful, I'd be happy to start looking at more of these that pertain to individual topics we have on agenda, or looking at the overall series and trying to make our way through them in some sort of orderly fashion as part of this continuing education program. I know a lot of you really appreciate having staff come in for these as well, and I do too. So I'm not at all suggesting this is a substitute for that, but maybe just a supplement to it. So David?
Okay, great. I will share screen. This is part of the United for Library Short Takes for Trustees. This is actually number 9 on the list, so we're skipping right to the end here. But you can see the other, as Thomas mentioned, what it means to be a trustee, board meetings, board ethics, library advocacy, library policy, strategic planning, working with friends, evaluating a library director, self-evaluation, and succession planning, and board orientation.
And is that the same series we started before?
That was before my time.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Oh.
Okay.
I can look through the
We've gone
notes.
A couple of them,
Okay.
well, probably 5, maybe 4.
Yeah, but that's okay because
It's
I
okay.
think, like, Mike, were you
here when we were doing that?
Remember some of those, yeah.
But I think
We've had a
most
fair amount of
people-
turnover. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
but most people have not seen
Okay.
that.
Okay.
And so I do think it's helpful.
Okay.
Can
And they're
you
very short and
maybe
approachable.
email
And I
that?
think it's
Link
good
to
to
the
match it
list.
to what we're considering at that time, like you said.
Yes. Okay.
That's much more effective.
Okay, so I, at my suggestion, will email this out to everyone too, so that you all can, you do need to create a login with United for Libraries if you don't already have one, but you can do that for free and then take a look at what the offerings are. And it's free because the state library is subsidizing it. Okay, it's 7 minutes, I believe. So I will turn it on and let me know about volume.
Welcome to Short Takes for Trustees. I'm Beth Novolinsky, the Director of
Can we pause it
Marketing
for a second, just check
Communications
the
for
volume for everybody?
United for Libraries.
Kathy, Lisa, is that sounding okay for you guys? Kathy, Lisa, was that sounding okay? Just want to
It's
make sure.
okay. I can hear her.
Okay. Okay, well, let's go on then. Thank you.
Mhm.
We are the division of the American Library Association for trustees, advocates, friends, and foundations. I'm here today speaking with our Executive Director, Sally Gardner-Reed, and we're talking about board self-evaluation. Sally, we've talked in a previous webcast about evaluating the library director. How about the board evaluating itself? Is there any value in that?
Yes, I think it could be very valuable for boards, both governing and advisory. And I'm happy to let you know that we have a very wonderful toolkit that can help boards with the board self-evaluation process, and it's available as part of the short takes for trustees.
Can you tell me a little bit about what's involved in the process of self-evaluation for the board members?
Yes, it's an in-depth process that takes the board through all the areas of competencies that should actually be general knowledge for the board, such as knowing the board's budget, understanding its mission, understanding how to set policy, knowing the different roles between the library director and the board itself, knowing how the communication strategies are for getting the message for the library out, that sort of thing. It's a way for them to assess their strengths and weaknesses as a board.
Can you tell me a little bit about how this self-evaluation process is conducted?
Well, if done right and with an eye to really making meaningful progress and great growth as a board, it's an in-depth process. So I would recommend something like a half or full day retreat. And again, I would recommend using a toolkit that we've already designed because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. It's, as I say, it's a wonderful toolkit and it can be modified and redesigned to meet the unique needs of any particular library or board.
What's included in the toolkit?
Our toolkit looks at every topic individually, for example, advocacy, policy, budget, strategic planning. So, for example, if we took strategic planning, there would be different areas, sub areas under that, like creating goals, setting the vision, monitoring the plan, assessing progress, engaging partners. And under each of those, you would say, simply, yes, you're doing it. Are you monitoring progress on a regular basis? Do you assess progress once a year? Have you set your goals? Have you set your visions? And these yes or no answers really tell you where you are. So maybe you set your goals and set your visions, but you're not monitoring progress on a monthly basis, or you're not assessing the progress at the end of the year. And maybe you're not orienting new board members when they come on board as to the strategic plan and the direction you set. So all of those things tell you where you are and where you should be. So it's a really great way to show where your strengths are and where the gap is.
Are these checklists for individual trustees, the board as a whole, or both?
Actually, they're for both. So there will be checklists for trustees to fill out individually, and there will be checklists for the board to look at as a whole. So some trustees will be more ahead of the curve in doing some things and have higher levels of competency, understanding the mission better than others, understanding the budget better than others. But as a collective whole, they may have areas to grow together. So it really works on both levels.
Are there other areas of knowledge that the trustees would be evaluating themselves on?
Yes, they would want to evaluate themselves on how well they know their local laws or ordinances that govern them at the county or city level. Also state laws such as open meeting laws and how well they're in compliance with those. They also should evaluate themselves on their knowledge of patron confidentiality laws. Typically those are at the state level, and also the broader issues that govern their policy making, like intellectual freedom issues, the Library Bill of Rights, those things that end up governing the way they develop policies.
We've talked in previous discussions about the trustees working with a friend and individual trustees meeting with their elected officials. Are those part of this evaluation process as well?
Absolutely. In fact, if you go back over the past interviews that we had, a lot of what we've discussed will be part of this board self-evaluation. So we can look at that, the fiduciary responsibilities and duty of care and loyalty and obedience. And do the trustees remember and understand what those are and the way in which those impact them? And as we said just earlier, the difference in their roles and how they engage community and their participation in the strategic planning process. All of those areas that we've discussed in the past interviews are areas that they're going to evaluate themselves on in terms of their actually implementing that and understanding that as they work together as a board.
Great. And now what will the trustees do with these? Their individual checklists and the board checklist, what do they do with it when they're finished?
After they're finished, I hope that they won't just go home and forget about it. They should be able to see where they're really doing a great job, but they should also be able to see where they need to grow. So hopefully they'll set some goals for themselves about where they need to improve and perhaps create an agenda item for their board meetings. Perhaps this is where those discussions we had talked about in an earlier conversation could take place. If they're not so familiar with the intellectual freedom culture for libraries, that would be a great discussion to hold at future board meetings and bring the trustees who are less aware of the importance of intellectual freedom on library service delivery and collection development would come into play so that they next year when they go on their retreat, the full board has a much better understanding for those areas in which maybe they have some weaknesses.
Well, this toolkit sounds like a great educational tool and a great assessment tool. And it also really reinforces the important role that trustees play on behalf of the library. So thank you, Sally, for this great conversation. And for our viewers, as Sally mentioned, this toolkit is available for you to use with your board in self-evaluation process, along with some other resources that your library director will provide to you. We encourage you to check out those resources, use the toolkit, modify it to the uniqueness of your library, and start this self-evaluation process. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Before we discuss that and our thoughts, I guess we'll just go ahead and move as part of that conversation on to the next agenda item there for new business and discuss the format, because there has been a change to it that I think we should all be aware of before we start our conversation about the ways in which it's useful. So there was a question at our last meeting about could it be improved upon? We've had that question in the past as we've done this ranking 1 through 5 on the series of questions. David went to see if we had any peer libraries who used a different format and found that that was actually the recommended self-evaluation given to us by the state, and it had changed. So instead of a ranking of 1 through 5, it is now a simple yes, no on everything. Could you maybe pull it up if you had it there? So a little bit more straightforward. And I just want to keep that in mind as we have that talk about what we just watched and the ways in which we should be thinking about this as we go through our own self-evaluations. So with that, I'll just open the floor to anything anyone would like to say.
One other
Yes.
point. So I did send this out to all the directors in the state of Virginia. Everybody who was doing a board self-evaluation was using this recommended from the state library, this version, the one that's in your packet.
Mhm.
The state library did also recommend that everybody look at the United for Libraries packet that was just discussed in the video.
Okay.
So I can send that out this afternoon too.
Sure, yes, I guess we could look at it, it wouldn't hurt. This will be the one that we're filling out for our purposes. Lisa and Kathy, can you hear David okay? Is this mic picking up?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I can hear.
I can too.
great, thank you.
Wonder, I think maybe in getting some more ideas on what to do with it. Because we're not going to retreat and having, you know, an amount of time set aside just for that.
Yeah.
So that's a possibility.
Absolutely.
So I'm anxious to see what people think about, once we do it, how to make it. you know, effective.
I agree, and I think the yes, no hopefully will be kind of more helpful to that in a way, because it a little more clearly defines where we share overlap and things we're uncomfortable with, or things we feel we want to learn more about. My encouragement to everybody would be willing to be very critical of yourself in that in that capacity, and I'm not going to take no's on here as anybody feeling necessarily despondent or overwhelmed, but I'd like to be able to have that conversation as honestly and as clearly as we can about where, as a group, we need to move forward with our ongoing education, and individually I think they said it well in the group. We're all going to have different strengths. We don't all need to be rock stars on everything, but hopefully the yes and no will show us a little more clearly where, as a group, we need to move together. So.
I guess the one thing that has come up in the past is sometimes a trustee isn't sure.
Mhm.
There's like an in-between, like where they just don't know, like they're like, I'm not sure if we're doing this or not. And so maybe there could be that option, whether it's a, not sure button, or within the comments, people are encouraged to say when they're not sure if they themselves are fulfilling it,
Mhm.
or whether the board itself is fulfilling
Sure.
that part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I'm not sure how much we can modify it in this format, so I might suggest that we lean towards no if you're feeling unsure, and like you say, elaborate in the comments
In the
about what it
comments.
is
Mhm.
that's sort of.
I think it comes up a lot when, like, maybe you're not sure about it seems to come up a lot, like with advocacy, and also maybe at the state level, when we're not sure, what are we doing at the state level?
Mhm.
Yeah, just that it's fine to say no, but then, to explain, I'm actually not sure.
Yeah, I think exactly, right. It'll help inform our conversation if we, either in the comments or in the conversation when we come together with this, can be clear about, what do we think would help us, get better insight, better clarity into what we're doing.
If you're saying no, then I think you probably should also in your comments say why you are saying no.
Right. Yes, I would agree with that.
It is, it will be a Survey Monkey survey, so it's as customizable as you all want it to be.
How do we feel about the maybe? Would that help people, or would that muddy the water?
I'd rather have that than a no that means, that can
That
mean
can
one
mean
of
two
two
things.
different things.
Okay.
One thought I had while you were talking, you could just leave it blank, a specific line item, and that's the same as I don't have enough information to answer this question.
Sure.
That would be another option. That wouldn't require any modification.
Is that, I guess another way of putting it is, if we think that the maybe is only going to be used as in, I don't have enough information, should we just make it say that and be clear about it?
Yeah, I would prefer-
Go
I
ahead.
think, I think that sounds like a good idea. However, I would like at the end of this discussion, because so many evaluations occur with things, and then the evaluation, whether it's self-evaluation or group evaluation, nothing is done with it. So if we have areas where someone may say, know, or I don't quite understand. I think maybe we should pull the data together and possibly do something during the meetings to refresh those who may not know, or to teach those, who already know, or to enlighten those who do not know.
Thank
So
you,
I
Kathy.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree with you more, and I that would be my hope too, that once we have all of our responses collected, we can take, it might, stretch the meeting a little bit, but we take a good while to go through everything and compile an action item list that we can give to David so that he can start to organize these ongoing education sections of our meeting around where we think we need improvement. That would be my hope.
yeah, sounds good to me too.
Okay.
So we'd like to add an option saying,
Sure,
Not enough information?
yeah.
Yeah. I think not enough information is a good distinction to make between no. It also tells us about a need for information, a need for education, but in a slightly different way. And again, please be liberal with the comments. I'll read them all.
I can make that change and get that sent out this week, and then Thomas, you can set a date that you want responses by, and so that you have enough time to look them over and share with the board for the August meeting to discuss.
Yes, that sounds great. Okay. Thank you all. Any last thoughts on this topic before we move on?
Well,
Yes.
this is something slightly different, but one of the things we talked about before was having a matrix of like where the board is lacking in terms of expertise.
Okay.
And that could come out of a self-evaluation or a little retreat. So like one of the things that has come up is like, oh, in the past, we have had legal expertise on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody outside of just our legal counsel.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we had a wish list, certain things have to be covered. Like we need the right number of representation
Right.
from the different localities. But then if there's a wish list of skills or knowledge that we feel like the board also needs or could benefit from, that could be something that would come out of a board evaluation or a board retreat.
I could see that as a sort of select all that apply. Where do you think you are strong? And then we kind of make that matrix out of people's responses and see what we filled in.
What if we use this, just a suggestion, to help develop the list?
Yeah.
So in other words, name the top 10 skill sets that you wish were that you think would be important to be represented on the board.
I love that idea.
Without, and at this phase, it would be without a reference to I'm good at these three and bad at these three.
These could be things you see in yourself.
Yeah, but
or
the
things you
superset, we would see what came up with the 90 answers to that. And then we'd be able to kind of develop a matrix for future use.
I think that's a great idea and a wonderful way to get that conversation started. May not get us to a conclusion on that matrix this year, but gets the ball rolling for something we have in the future. Is that something everybody feels comfortable with? A question at the end of this self-evaluation that asks to list the 10, what do we call them? Skill sets,
Knowledge base.
knowledge bases that would be critical to a good trustee. Okay.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say they're not good for an individual trustee. They're
Right.
good as a
board.
mix to be represented within the mix of trustees on the board.
Very good distinction. Thank you.
So like it's helpful to have somebody who has a certain level of technical knowledge and up-to-date technical knowledge on the board. That might be some part of your wish list. It might be somebody who's really keen on advocacy or PR, that type of thing.
Sure. Okay.
I think that would be a very useful thing to be able to bring to our jurisdictions too, as they're making decisions about future board seats, to say, here's
Here's
we're
what we've
looking for on the
identified.
board, here's what we've got covered. If you see applicants that meet these other areas, that would be a great benefit.
Yeah, with other boards I've worked with, we do, where we've needed both regional coverage, jurisdictional coverage, and then also we have looked at a skill base as well.
Okay, so I will add that question and add a third option. It says not enough information for each of the questions. And then something else.
Okay.
Great,
Thank you, Dave.
thank you all.
All right, moving right along then, unless one last call, any other thoughts, comments? Okay, moving along then. Our next item under new business is discussion and vote for the board and budget schedule. David, can you introduce this one?
Sure, so this is the fiscal year, it says it's the fiscal year 22 library board meeting and budget schedule. Wait a minute, is this the correct one today, the 26th? Yes, okay, just making sure. And the decisions that need to be made are effectively around the holidays and then about your travel schedule for this year. The February one that I had highlighted is actually fine, that the 21st is the holiday, the 28th is the day you would actually meet.
Okay.
So it's not a conflict. This is based on the schedule that this body had adopted going into the fiscal year before last, basically, that all got shut down because of COVID. So it didn't get to make any of the trips. What the board in the past has said is that what they want to do is visit each of the outlying jurisdictions once a year. So one trip annually to Greene, Louisa, and Nelson to host the board meeting there, and then rotate another site one time a year. So 4 out of your 12 meetings would be on the road, basically. So the one that we missed last year was the Scottsville Library in December. So the decisions now are whether or not to go ahead with that, when to hold the December meeting, because it is right around the holidays, and then whether or not the timing for visits to Greene, Louisa, and Nelson is okay. This board had wanted to do it later in the spring to avoid bad weather and travel, although I do see an advantage to doing it early in the year while budgets are being discussed in each of those locales. So if there's a chance that members of the public or maybe the administration or elected officials from those counties wanted to be there, the board would be right down the street.
Thank you, David. This is something we will need a motion and a vote on today to adopt, with the understanding that all sorts of things may change with how we hold our meetings in the future.
Correct.
But if we are able to meet in person, as David said, we'd have a meeting in Scottsville the week around Christmas. So that's a key decision there about meeting on the 20th or the 28th. And then I think it might be worth that discussion. I know, as David said, it is potentially a difficult time of year to travel if we run into weather. But I see some value in having those meetings locally around the time of budget discussions to give a little more visibility to what we're doing and accessibility to it. Other thoughts?
That's something else I noticed, is just that the so-called outlying or just pushed way back. I feel like September, you could get to one of the, I'm not too worried about weather in September.
No.
And also Nelson is new and shiny. So if I were making hand scratches on here, I might, suggest penciling in Nelson instead in September.
Yeah, they don't have to be back to back to back.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing I would say is if you really do want them, when we have at least a working budget, are September and October too early?
Yes, September, we wouldn't have a working budget for that.
Right. But which is the priority, I guess I would say, is to be in the outlying counties in January? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I would like that. I'll tell you what, in theory, I would like that. In practice, it's much more likely that the trustee for that jurisdiction and myself will be attending the meetings of those other bodies, and that there will go to them, and we do that annually anyway. So that's going to be happening no matter what. They're going to hear from the library during that time frame. I would like the opportunity to be there in case either members of the public or elected officials wanted to come and participate in this process, but we have very rarely had takers on that.
Right.
Okay.
So let's go back. So the main purpose for moving them, if we move them, would not be to coincide with budget discussions in that locality, but rather we should still keep weather as the determinant.
Well, I think that's the conversation we're having, basically
Okay.
making that decision.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is our primary purpose for being there, to move our business and be visible and be available to everybody in every corner of our jurisdiction? Or is the primary reason to be holding it at that time where we have the budget and can be available and accessible to further the conversation about the budget? I think,
And I think there is a certain level of just trustees knowing all of
Right.
the facilities.
yeah,
And-
yes,
and the-
yes,
And what makes those facilities and those communities special.
yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it as
Good.
well.
Oh, yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. It's more of an overall mix for me.
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's mix it
Me
up
too.
and not have a clump where it seems like they're,
Yeah.
And also,
this is
the time of year where we,
Yeah, it's like, it's kind of a different time of year. Like, their facility, like all the other ones, let's just mix it up and
also
That's
the nature of the public meeting now makes it so that it's a bit easier for some folks to participate at other times.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, if we're talking about regions that have areas of broadband bandwidth, getting to the library physically is the best way to connect.
Mhm.
I would recommend moving Nelson up,
I
just
would like-
because we have not,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
That's what I get.
Could we move Nelson to the October meeting?
Alita, what do you think?
Well, and when you were talking about September, I was thinking about the thing that was going on in September, and that's, oh, that's not a problem. But October, I think October would be fine.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah, Alita's referring to, we're starting planning for a grand reopening in September, just that the building's open, but a
Right.
celebration.
A
in
celebration.
September. It's not the same day, unfortunately, Alita. Not go over. Okay, so you would like to shift Nelson to October?
October 25th,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And we will provide carpooling. On a central location.
Green and Louisa, we want to move those from April and May.
Jenny, how are you? Okay. Irrelevant.
Yeah, whatever the board would like to
Yeah,
do.
it's
we're
irrelevant.
Happy to have you.
Okay.
you could swap one to March or else. There's not a lot of other space if we think about weather and
Mhm.
Sure, why don't we move Louisa to March and then we'll give ourselves a little, we won't be on the road 2 months in a row there.
So October, December, March, and
And we have
May.
Scottsville in December there. We need to, have the conversation about the 20th or the 28th. Kathy, Lisa, does that sound okay to you?
This is Lisa. For me, everything sounds fine. I'm just looking at December right now and it feels impossible. It just feels like, oh, that's really tight. Both of
Yeah.
those.
Bad week.
It is not a good week.
And it comes up every year.
Yeah.
That is always the issue.
20th or the 28th is what David has up on the screen.
And again, the board can set whatever.
Yes.
Whatever dates or time you want to meet on the 25th, that's.
Yeah, I was gonna say, these
Let's
are.
throw in more holidays. Many as possible. Christmas, Kwanzaa, all of them. Hanukkah, we want to meet on all the holidays.
But then November 22nd is my birthday. That's a holiday, so we should.
All right.
I'd like that added to the notes.
I make sure we sing happy birthday in November.
Do we have to have a meeting away from the city in December?
I was just gonna offer that, if part of the complication here around the week of Christmas is coming down to Scottsville, I'd be happy to bump that one to another time of year and just try to simplify things as much as we can during that week.
For me, it's not the location. I think it's just the date and the timing and all the uncertainty. Who knows if,
Exactly.
like for me, I don't have any kids at school anymore. So it might be a case of if the world is open, I might be traveling for Christmas or, I might have family in town. So either way, I don't know, it just feels like I know we do discuss this every year. It's just so strange to see both of those dates seem to coincide with big travel dates as well as, holiday times.
I completely agree.
I agree also.
How would the board feel about meeting on a different day of the week and moving it a little earlier in the month? And we could do the end of the third week of December, sometime around the 15th, 16th, 17th.
That feels more realistic in terms of availability for me, but I'm just one person.
I'm very happy to have a Friday afternoon meeting if we all want to.
I'm never happy to-
Friday afternoon.
I think that's grounds for library firing squad, I was sure, but I read it in the bylaws if we meet on a Friday afternoon.
Okay,
But
Thursday afternoons then?
yeah, that looks fine to me. For this
Thursdays.
one, the 15th or the 16th would be Wednesday, or could it coincide with any committee meetings? I know sometimes there's committee meetings on Wednesdays, so, or sometimes.
What do we have on that?
I mean, it's too far out. We don't have anything planned. I'm
Okay.
trying to figure out if we have a policy committee meeting at that time. So we would have one August, or December. We would be having a policy committee meeting, but we would likely have it just before
Whenever it is.
whatever date we pick.
Right.
And that would usually be on a Wednesday?
That's usually right before this meeting. So we would do the same.
Oh, it would come in with a couple hours immediately prior. Okay.
I see.
I still feel even changing the date would not, December is just a month full of a lot of activities.
Yeah.
And I am afraid, now I'm just one person, but I'm afraid of how many people will actually be available to attend a different day in December.
I hear you. And I will try to keep that agenda as light as possible so that we're not missing much if anybody can't attend. But if we can find a date that gets us a quorum, we have to have a meeting that month, don't we?
Oh, yeah, have a meeting, but I'm just thinking away from, well, I just think, well, I'm
Oh,
one
away from-
person.
Sure, no, I see. We're back on, do we move the Scottsville meeting and have that one be a north side? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And visit, I want to visit. I think it's a wonderful time, but December just brings about so many variables. So,
I think that's a good idea. I like the idea of simplifying it, especially if we're moving the date significantly off of our regular meeting time and asking a policy committee meeting to happen right beforehand. I think it makes sense to be here at Northside for that one in December. So can we settle the date for that one and then we'll look at,
But
yes, sorry.
The Monday, since we've been meeting on Mondays, if we do Monday the 13th or Monday the 6th, maybe not the 6th because we just had the one in November, but maybe the 13th, just because that keeps us away from the late month holidays.
I think the 13th would work for me. I mean, any of these Mondays are a little tricky for me because I have town council meetings at 7 o'clock those nights, but I should be able to get out of here and back down there for that.
Lord, I hope so. Goodness gracious. We never met till dark. Let's not start that, Thomas.
All of my other meetings, evening meetings, unfortunately.
I'm okay with the 16th.
Do we have a preference between, I hear some okay with the 16th and some preference for the 13th. Do we have a preference there between Monday and
Right now.
No, I'm
Thursday?
saying any day matters. I don't care.
Okay.
I'm here, you know.
All right, will somebody speak up? Monday or Thursday?
I'd say keep it to the Mondays because we're accustomed to meeting on Mondays and that way we don't forget.
Okay, does that work with everyone's schedule reasonably well?
Is that the 13th, you said?
That would be Monday, the 13th at our normal meeting time, 3 o'clock.
Yes, I like that as well.
And the location.
And that'll be here at
Northside.
Northside.
So now you have to get to Scottsville somewhere.
Yes, so do we want to slide it back in between Louisa and Green and put ourselves on the road for 3 months? Or do we want to try to put it in somewhere else in the schedule there?
Well, you could do it in November.
Or January. We're doing
September.
Nelson in October. if we move it to January, that keeps us from being out of Northside for more than 2 months in a row. But puts us at a travel date in late January, which, you know, probably gives us our highest chance of weather-related problems.
What's wrong with September or November? Someone just mentioned.
Moving it up earlier.
Yeah,
I guess we had talked about Nelson in October, so it's a little bit the same of, do we want to be on the road for 2 months?
I don't mind the being on the road part, especially if we could see these things, see these other locations without risk, with lower risk of weather. I mean, I don't, either way, I'm not walking to any of these places. I'll be driving. So I think I'll be able to, I like that idea of, I don't know, I think it'd be kind of fun.
Okay, Scottsville in September, Nelson in October, Louisa in March, and Green in May.
Yeah.
And that more or less keeps us to warmer months.
Sounds good. I like
Okay.
that. I like November is a tough one usually because that's the week of Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also an important one because the board adopts a proposed budget there. So anything we can do to try and make sure we have a forum at the November meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, you got that, Jenny?
Okay, so what I've got from the top here, based off of what we're looking at on the screen share, I have the September 27th meeting, moving from Northside to Scottsville. I have the October 25th meeting, moving from Northside to Nelson. I have us singing Happy Birthday to Kathy on November 22nd. Monday, December 13th, we will be here at Northside at our normal time, 3 p.m. We didn't have to make a decision on February 21st. You said that was the.
I think, did I understand that the date should be February 28th for that board meeting?
Gotcha, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so everyone make note that we've moved, that we are gonna be up a week in February there.
I'll send it.
Yeah.
The 28th, right.
And then we have Louisa in March, and we're sticking with Green in May. Okay,
That's good.
if that sounds okay to everybody, would someone like to make a motion to adopt this calendar?
Make a motion to approve as amended.
Thank you very much, Jim. All in favor?
second.
David, I'll talk to you about this later, but procedurally, it was brought to my attention that our bylaws have us operating under the Roberts rules for small bodies. And we technically don't have to second. We can move right along to a vote.
Yeah.
So all in favor?
Bye.
Thank you very much. Okay, so back to our agenda. I can find it. Religious accommodations policy. David, Michael, which one of you is done?
David has it on the screen. And this is our first, this has been, it was originally drafted by Green branch manager Jeannie Reese, who did a lot of research in terms of what are the controlling legal standards that surround religious accommodations. And this also came out of the employee handbook working group effort. It was something we saw in a number of handbooks, and we wanted to cover. We're already covered in the sense that we're bound by these laws, but we wanted to communicate to employees, point of the handbook, sort of the bullet points that they need to know. And then we wanted to write down sort of a more detailed backing statement of that as a policy. So the policy committee has recommended this language that we adopt as a new policy, sort of for those reasons that I just described. So today is the first reading of this, and it would be then for a vote at the next meeting. I don't think I need to read it out loud. We'll just give everyone a chance to look it over. This did get a review by the managers, the branch managers, if I'm correct, and they had a couple of questions, sort of logistically, or how would it work, but that's the policy committee looked at it after that, so we incorporated any feedback from that.
I have a question about it. JMRL seems to have, okay, they're doing it in good faith, but shouldn't the employee have some onus too? Like, they can't say, well, you know, I have this religious thing.
Right.
And so when the manager is making the schedule, shouldn't they have like, maybe say 2 weeks before, because they know that this is gonna come up.
Right, so we do, yeah, how did we?
Yeah, they have to do it in advance.
I think the
What did we
key
say
is
about
the
that? Yeah.
accommodation, about the undue hardship, unless such accommodation will cause undue hardship. So if she showed up today and said, oh, by the way, I need to be away for the rest of the week because I have this religious need, then the manager could say, I'm sorry, we want to support you in that. That's going to cause an undue hardship because we don't have any coverage and we wouldn't be able to offer
Right.
service and we need, some more leeway.
So that would be covered in under.
I think so, and we will likely come up with some procedures for managers that would work under this. Basically, the policy is the overall, if we want to support this.
Right.
And I think that saying that undue hardship basically leaves some room there for the manager to make sure that it's not going to cause a lack of service for anybody else.
And I think that if there were a specific procedure, a 2-week notice or whatever it might be, I think that could end up in the employee handbook. I don't remember, I think we're probably, the language right now is kind of at this broader level.
Yeah, it might depend on the situation, which is also addresses at the bottom. It says reasonable accommodations will be determined on a case-by-case basis.
Mhm.
So, I don't know that we need to set a specific,
Yeah.
it has to be 2 weeks in advance, but it's more of a trusting our staff and our
Right.
managers to figure it out.
And it seems to say that the last sentence, that request for using leave must be approved in advance. So that seems to suggest that there is a kind of built-in that says, oh, I can't just say tomorrow I need off. I have to put this, that's not sufficiently advanced notice. Which I think,
But yeah, I think the intent here is just to let employees know that the organization supports these religious practices. It is the legal standard that accommodation is not sort of absolute. It's sort of balanced against the organization's needs. And so this, at the policy level, we're just sort of laying out those principles. And as David said, if it became an issue operationally, then the management would have can rely on these principles to put various operational controls in place to make sure it's working for the organization.
is it appropriate to ask, Mike, have you, in terms of the research that you were doing for the policy work here, has this come up as an issue for employees or for staff who didn't feel like, is there precedent for staff not feeling as if they were able to meet their religious obligations? Has this come up? No, I'm not saying that.
Not from that end, Lisa. I've never heard, or it hasn't reached my attention that somebody felt that they didn't have the time that they needed there. I mean, JMRL's leave policies are pretty good. I have heard the other end of it where there's an ongoing accommodation where a manager inherits a situation where somebody can't work a certain schedule or whatnot, and there was nothing like this in place to help guide them there either. So I've heard it from the manager's end where there was an existing accommodation, but not from the staff end where they were trying to make an accommodation or ask for one and hadn't been granted it.
I see. Thank you.
And I think just in practice, that would tend to come up at a smaller branch where there's just less of a pool to draw from.
Yeah.
And even if there's not been a need for this, I think it's nice to have it in place and very preventative for problems on the road.
Yes.
It's basically, as I said, we're already bound
Yeah.
essentially by this. So it's just a matter of writing it down so everybody knows the
Yes.
ground
I
rules.
agree.
So,
I agree. I love the idea. I think but I think policies help with transparency and it makes everyone move more easily through the organization. So I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely. Okay.
all right, well, so today was just a reading and then we would have sort of any official discussion. This is great to get the ball rolling, but if you have further thoughts, there would be a discussion would be part of any motion and then we would have a vote next month.
And I'd like to thank Jenny for her work on this.
Yeah.
Me too.
Definitely.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you very much.
It was enjoyable
Thank you so much. Thank
It's
you.
not just that she's from Green, but she's from,
But she did the hard work.
yes.
But it's not because she's from Green.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, we'll have a little more discussion and take a vote on that next month. And in the meantime, if anybody has any further thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out to David or Michael to discuss. Or me, of course. Let's see. Michael, I guess we're going to stick with you here, moving on to committee appointments and reports. I'll let you take the first bit there on the handbook working group report, and then I'll just say one more thing before we move on in our agenda after that.
Okay, basically the same thing you hear every month, which is that we're going great guns. And I think actually we have a draft of all the chapters now. I didn't look at one yet.
Yes, we have at least something on
With
paper.
something written down for the whole thing. And it's really, I think, so there's probably one or two of the 6 planned sections that we want to review as a committee. And then there's probably 1 or 2 others that we've already reviewed, and we kind of need to clean up a few little bullet points, but we may have a full version as soon as our next meeting. It would just be a sort of an initial reveal, I suppose. And I imagine it'll be in September, if not August. So that's your heads up on that. Yeah, extra reason to get out of bed in August for the August meeting. That's sort of the status.
And at that point, it's very important, I think, that this working group's talked about this quite a bit, that we let all staff have a view at that same point,
Right.
because it's gonna, impact their daily lives, so they need to get in at the earliest chance to make some comment and let us get back to work.
Yeah, so when I say reveal, it's really showing the staff, but there's probably no reason not to show the trustees at the same time. But yes, I would expect, certainly, I know David will have a feedback collection process or mechanism, and then the committee will regroup to, so ideally in September, we'd be looking at feedback if we're able to reveal in August.
Okay.
But that's sort of a heads up on all that.
And then I know you have been working hard on this and trying to get it to be useful as soon as possible. Feedback in September, how soon would you hope to turn around and have us ready to vote on it?
So technically, that's an interesting point to bring up. I think this is actually
An administrative
an
document.
administrative document.
Yeah.
It's telling the staff, what do you need to know about, it's a mix of what do you need to know from our underlying procedures that affect you. And that, so you've seen things like this religious accommodations kind of kick up just as things that we wanted to make sure we had a policy in place or review or update. Where we notice holes in our policy at some of this policy level, but the document itself, to the extent that it definitely refers to policies all throughout, but it's a bullet point, it's a link saying, here's the policy and here's the 3 bullet points you need to kind of know day to day. And then it's a mix of other things that are not policy or not appropriately policy, like, your timing of your breaks and logistics, very important for a day-to-day employee.
But not the thing that needs to.
It's not a policy level,
Yeah.
but it's all in one place, consolidated for them to know, okay, I just look at the workplace section and I can see, here's where it's written down where that there's the parameters controlling when I do or not take breaks. So I think I do think it's important for the board, when it's done, to look at the final product.
Yeah.
Similarly to the staff having their feedback opportunity, the board may have thoughts or feedback. And so I envision, I suppose, some sort of endorsement or vote, I think if there should be a board review, but it's not
I'm fine with it.
we don't know, it's
Yeah.
not procedurally, it's not something we adopt as a board.
I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah,
there.
but I do think there should be, maybe Dave, we can start thinking about, or you and Thomas can start thinking about.
Resolution, maybe.
Yeah, resolution type of
Something-
thing.
Something like
Yeah.
that, saying,
We're happy with
yeah,
this
thank you to the
product.
working group. for wanting to work
Yeah.
really hard.
I mean, I guess you're right. I think that would be the biggest thing to start with, appreciation where it's due. If other library systems have reinforced it with a resolution or something like that, I'd be happy to. But if this is an
Right.
administrative document that just lives with you, I'd
Can send
fine
it.
with
Well,
that as
also,
well.
technically, a lot of the handbooks we looked at say this handbook was adopted by the Board of Trustees on such and such a date. So we'll have to revisit, yeah, exactly
Okay.
what.
A lot of the ones that we looked at are official personnel policy manuals that are accompanied by some sort of handbook or whatnot. So,
Okay.
it's a bit
Yes.
of a hybrid.
Yeah, it's true that we're taking the approach again of here's what the employee needs to know. So legalistic
They know.
policy stuff is not there. If we refer back to the legalistic policy stuff, but we're just we try to take a kind of a
I have-
more informal tone.
I see.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, we want to be able to change it as things
Yeah.
change.
Exactly.
Right.
So you don't want it written in stone, but.
But I would imagine that if any board members had any serious concern about any of the specifics, the procedural specifics there, then we would want to go back and review that. Or we wouldn't want to kind of put into place something for the staff that the board didn't agree with, so. we would want to
Yeah,
transfer
vice versa.
feedback.
Okay. Well, let's all take our opportunity for feedback seriously when that is put forward next month. Give it a thorough reading and hopefully next month. Sorry, no pressure. And we will go from there. Anything else, Michael, you want to say?
That's it, thanks.
Okay. I think my comments are actually under a different agenda item, a couple down, so I'll save it for the budget committee discussion. So moving along, old business, we have the ARPA grant application. David, would you catch us up to speed?
Yes, so sorry for the tiny print here. But we discussed this briefly last month. I let you all know that the Library of Virginia was giving every library in the state the opportunity to apply for a share of the American Recovery Protection Act monies that the state library got. They're doing this in a very fair manner. They are splitting it up amongst all the state libraries according to the same percentages that they use for state aid annually. So that has to do with, how many jurisdictions you serve, how many people, the total geographic area, a few other things that are in the state code formula. So that puts JMRL near the top of the list there, or the second highest percentage statewide. So the total funds available for JMRL, I can't even are $95,459, which have to be spent basically within the next fiscal year. There is an application process. The application is due this week. So this is the breakdown of the things that I described to you last month, and just what the actual costs are that we will look at. Basically, we're looking at three things. We're looking at exterior hold pickup lockers. The concept there is that it's a physical thing that sits on the outside of your building that extends your service hours and still offers contactless pickup as well. Most of them have 9 units on them. They sit out there, and the staff would put something on hold, notify the staff through our own process that we want to pick it up outside. The staff would go out there, open the locker, put it in, code it to you, so you can show up at any point in the next 7 days or whatnot. Scan your library card, your locker pops open, and you get your materials to go. Why only 3 of them here? Well, the Friends of the Library family of funds at the Charlottesville Area Community Foundation also is committed to supporting this project. So funds that were raised by the Grow Nelson Library Committee will help to purchase a unit for Nelson. And then we're looking at 2 other locations as well. So up to 6, I think, of the 8 locations served here. Likely it would be 2 in Charlottesville, maybe that would not get one. The pricing here is based on the highest quote that I could get my hands on in the last few weeks. These are a very hot commodity right now because all libraries across the country are getting access to federal funding. This is one of the things we're looking at. So this might be high. It's effectively $20,000 per unit. They might come in at lower than that. And if so, I spoke to the state to make sure that we could then reallocate some of the funding to one of our other priorities here, and they said that would be fine. The second category says remaining 20% of cost for 16 new PoE switches after E-rate category 2 reimbursement. It's a mouthful, but basically, if you remember our discussions about the equipment budget for next fiscal year, this is the first year that JMRL is going to apply for category 2 E-rate funding. Currently, we get category 1 E-rate funding, which is reimbursement on data lines costs. Next year, we're going to take advantage of the 80% reimbursement for networking equipment. So we got a whole huge list, which is at the end of the equipment budget. It's $120,000 or whatnot that we've applied for federal funding for. That would be 80% of the costs there. This would cover the remaining 20% of the costs. So again, that cost is not, it's what we got as estimates and quotes last year. It's a fluid thing, we'll see. And the final category is at the bottom there, digital content, ebooks, audiobooks, and streaming. This is gonna be basically what's left after the first year spent put towards digital content for the library system. So overdrive materials, materials and reading, things like that. So these are the specific numbers. I gave you the what I was intending to apply for last month. There's feedback. This application is due by Wednesday, so I'll take it as soon as you have it.
Okay. Thoughts? And ultimately, you're looking for a vote and approval of this.
We don't need, so our grant policy says that when we are accepted for
Awarded,
a grant,
right.
the board will vote. And then likely at that time, we will also need to make some financial motions because JMR will have to fund the costs for these and then be reimbursed by the state. Same for the lockers coming from the Friends, Family and Funds likely. So we need the board to make a resolution, to make a vote saying that they authorize the expenditures. But right now, we don't need to vote on anything. That's a ways off. These will all have to be competitively bid. So
Okay.
it's a multi-month process.
Okay. Thoughts on this application, feedback for David before he submits it on Wednesday? Lisa, Kathy?
Mine's not open.
No comment.
And
Okay. Thank you.
Correctly, but I think when I was reading through it, and maybe you could clarify, this is money from the response for COVID recovery.
Yes, correct.
Okay, and I know I'm trying to find it here on that thing that you gave us, but they went through project ideas and different things. And I don't have any issue with what you have, but some of the things I looked at, and I know we can't guess ahead, but if I was thinking in terms of staff having more to do, if it were targeted toward specifically people, because we already do this, but helping patrons get access to social services online. Are there particular online sites, services having to do with the pandemic, like or coming up, the child tax credit or something, that somebody would need to spend some time learning about and being able to advertise, to let people know that, oh, if you need help in social services after going through COVID, you couldn't even get online.
Yeah.
You could come to the library because they can help you with the application. They can,
So are you talking about training mostly for staff? Yeah, I think
or
we would.
just training, because training was part of it, but just and the training might be very specific, or it could just be an assignment that the person learns, by finding out, researching. But it would still be something specific to helping people who are still dealing, and they will be, with rent subsidy or whatever's going on. I can't imagine. And there's not any, I'm sure, the information the librarians need to know has to be acquired.
Yes.
Yeah.
So.
And that's time consuming.
Right. So we cannot use any of these funds for personnel. So, the way to free up time for somebody to go do one of those things is to hire somebody else to come work there. There's no other real way around that except to.
I was just thinking if we could target specifically, to increase, because they're gonna do it anyway.
Sure, yeah.
But I was just thinking it's just one more
I think
layer of expertise that needs to be learned and mastered and not just one place.
I think identifying training for those things, like resources to help staff do those would be a great expenditure. But I also think that's something that we would we would support operationally.
Okay.
If it came up, if we find some sort of resource.
Yeah,
that's
I
gonna
just
help.
saw that, some of the training things kind of meshed,
Yeah.
so I was thinking.
I also wonder if this could intersect with programming at all. A program that's
How to.
for, how to for the public, but also if it's heavy on here's where the resources are, the staff will be learning that at the same time. And the reason programming might be useful is because then we have support from the friends.
Yeah.
And that just brings in another area of support. So,
With support, yeah.
yeah, just a thought there.
But that's just.
Yeah, I think definitely staff have their eyes out for those types of resources right now. I'm sure there will be, like, as you mentioned, there's so many gaps there that there will be a lot of new resources. So I guess I'm thinking about the three things to what you're saying. One is staff, more staffing is one way to handle that, because then you can dedicate time for staff to learn about these things, and that's not really an option here. The second, though, is training. Identifying and finding the best training we can. And the third is looking for tools, like if there's a database that we can subscribe to that helps to aggregate these things, or something like that. Because think about Chiltons that we have. So all the automobile leads that you have are in one place. Like as we start to see the market kind of offer those types of things, we could definitely look to allocate some resources. So I don't know that we have enough information to put that in this application right now. But I think definitely on the staffing end, we would support it. And I believe this board probably would support it too. If something came up, we had to find a resource for it, we can find it. That make sense?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't thinking of it as, yes. It's not the staffing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they were very clear about that.
I know.
You cannot spend money on staffing.
So the only question I had was, like in the application, will you say that you do have kind of like matching funds from the friends?
One of the portions of the application was show us how you can support this long term.
Oh,
and
great.
if you have any other local
Great.
sources, so.
Great.
Right, so the friends will support these lockers short term. There are some ongoing costs for them. They're
Mhm.
annual operational kind of like maintenance type things.
They must use power too.
Yeah, they need power, they need work, they're more than just, because we also looked at, some libraries are doing this as a very DIY, like you ask the high school if they have any extra lockers and you buy some padlocks. and
Oh,
you lock
yeah.
them. We looked at that as well.
Yeah, but then if somebody else could just come back by, if they used it once, they've got the number.
I mean, you can buy padlocks where you change the lock every time, so I think there are ways to make it happen. The big thing though was the notification, we wanted that to be automated because that's what our patrons are used to. They're used to getting an email as soon as their item is checked in to let them know.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, because it can go either way sometimes, if you have existing funding that'll support it, but I think it'll help to show that we kind of have matching local funds.
I think
or-
so.
Yeah,
I think the state at this point is looking to make sure that we have a plan for what to do with this money, and then we'll be able to account for it all.
right,
They're not, it's not that basically they have allotted an amount for every library in the state.
Mhm.
So they're primed to say yes to our request, as long as it's a legitimate,
Sure.
as long as it's not for, for a party. Right? If you have any other feedback, just send it my way.
Well, good luck.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Okay, the budget committee. This is a sort of spin-off from our discussion last month about committees writ large, and we are still going to postpone that larger discussion for one more month until we wait for Meredith to join us. Carla, will that be next month, I guess? Is that right?
Mhm.
Wow, okay.
Well, I'm hoping she can be here.
I mean, she's technically not on until September, but I'm hoping she'll do what Alita did and come a month early just to.
Have some conversation. Okay. So we can at least start the conversation and maybe make these assignments in September then. But the budget committee has work that needs to get done before then. And as one of our larger and more important committees, also just has some kind of cleanup work with membership. As David explained to me, I was assigned to this when I came on and didn't know much about how it was all structured or set up. So this is something I've learned recently, that historically, the Budget Finance Committee has maintained representation from all of the jurisdictions, which makes perfect sense. So that's our primary thing of cleanup. In addition, well, that is one of the areas of cleanup. I guess the primary one is we need to name a chair for that committee, since I'm not officially, well, I'm on all of them, but not a named member on any of them now. So, or no, named member on all of them, but not, I forget how it works, but I can't be the chair of it, so.
Ex officio member.
Let's see, I made a few notes on here. Alita, we need to add you to the budget committee.
You're the only one who got a specific assignment.
And then we need to decide on a chair. Well, and I'm sorry, we need to add somebody to replace me on that as well. Michael, you are doing several other things that I think you want to stay involved in when we move on to that larger discussion. So I wish Tony were here so I could discuss this with him. I'll reach out to him personally. But this might be an area where I have to exert the only authority I have and make an assignment. So for the time being, for today, we'll call Tony a member of the budget committee, and unless he vociferously disagrees with that and we have to go back to the drawing board, we'll move forward, but I'll give him a call and let him know. Does anybody present want to act as chair of that committee? Or is that another conversation I should have with Tony?
I nominate.
I second the nomination. Yeah, his problem is that he's not here. So
There you go. He picked the wrong meeting.
Tony does have experience, you know,
Yes, he
as a
does,
board,
yeah.
and
Okay,
I'm not just doing it to avoid doing it myself.
You've already
thinking
taken a
him
turn.
immediately beforehand, you know,
okay.
and obviously you've got to talk to him.
Sure.
Yes, that's it.
Sure. Okay, well, I will have that conversation with Tony. I think that all sounds reasonable. Lisa, let me just ask you, while we're on budget committee, are you interested? And I will hopefully, I will do my best to find time in the coming month to have this conversation with everybody and give you all a call. And we can discuss in greater detail all of the things that you all might be interested in doing, so that we can hopefully get assignments that line up with everyone's interests. But Lisa, while we're talking about the budget committee here, let me ask you, is that something you're interested in continuing? And if not, we could talk with our other Charlottesville representatives here about making a change to that before we finalize the committee assignment for this year.
I'm flexible. I'm really flexible. My only thing is that I'm in a tight position in terms of my time, so I can't really take on a chair's position. But
Okay.
other than that, like if you need, I'm happy to do any committee work you feel like I could benefit, that I could support. I'm happy to stay on budget. If we want to give another city resident a chance, that's fine too. I mean, I'm totally fine to stay as I am or not. So I'm flexible.
My approach in this is that I hope we will be at our strongest when we have the most enthusiastic people on each of these seats, everybody doing something that they are interested in.
Yes.
And Lisa, I think that sounded relatively enthusiastic. So unless somebody's jumping up and down, waving their hands, Meredith will be coming in a couple of months and we can have that conversation again. We can change these assignments if need be.
But I'm happy as it is. I'm totally content with where I have with budget and 5 years. So I'm happy with that.
Okay, so for today, we will move forward with a budget committee that consists of Tony as chair, Wendy, Jim, Lisa, and Alita. And I will reach out to Tony and let him know.
Let this be a warning to all of us to never miss meetings.
That's right.
Come to meetings.
The issue is that we want the budget committee to have a meeting fairly soon
Right.
to approve the personnel committee has already approved the methodology for JMRL to reach a $15 minimum wage. We need the budget committee to craft a recommendation for the full board, well, really for themselves, for the creation of the budget on how to get there.
Okay.
So, yeah, that has the top priority out of these.
Yes.
But I think Tony will be interested in that.
Okay.
Because he's served on the,
Yeah.
you know, he's
I think he's willing. I
Yeah.
spoke to him and I told him that this was coming and he said he was willing to serve. Much like Lisa, willing to serve in whatever capacity. he was needed.
Okay, well, we will define that capacity for him then.
David, have you set a time for the budget?
No, I wanted to know what the chair was going to do.
Okay. All right, so if you are on that committee, look out for future communications from David or Tony about your upcoming meeting. And thank you all very much for your work there. Like I said, I'll do my best to get in touch with each of you in the coming month. And hopefully we can start the conversation in August about where we all want to land on committees and bring Meredith into that conversation as well and hear from her. And then we'll get that all wrapped up and move on with our calendars. So thank you all very much. Okay, last item of old business. We have the JMRL policy on disposal of library equipment that is up for a vote. David, would you, or Michael, would you like to refresh us on this one before we take our?
Sure. So this was this is more of a normal order type of policy, which is something that came up as a regular 10-year review. So it was a pre-existing policy. We did read it and I think have an introduction last month. The committee reviewed it and also the business manager pointed out that some of the wording referred to sort of some outdated processes, equipment sale versus disposal procedures, which are more broad. And so we're just coming up to date with some changes in those procedures. So if there's specific questions, happy to field them. Otherwise, it would be available for a motion.
Well, any comments, questions? Do I hear a motion to approve JMRL policy 3.1 on the disposal of library equipment? Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Wonderful. Thank you. The motion will pass.
Aye.
Thank you, Kathy. And we will move on then to David for our library director's report.
Yes, thank you. Just an update on JMRL's COVID response. Continue to successfully offer full hours and most services in tier 1 at all locations. The big thing is still planning for programming. Currently, JMRL is offering combinations of virtual, hybrid, outdoor, and some indoor programming. The indoor ones are mostly book clubs at this point, and those are hybrid as well. So much like this meeting, some people in the room, some people away. The emergency planning committee and the programming managers are still working to provide guidelines to staff. Delta variant is throwing a kink in our plans. The hope is to have a full fall slate of programming. So we're looking for much scaled up programming in the fall, but whether or not there can be a return to a full indoor slate is looking pretty unlikely day by day. So looking for every location to ramp up and offer more programming, but it might not be the traditional programming that we had in the past. So some combination of what we're doing now and adding on more services there. Just to report on the Friends of the Library sale that happened a few weeks ago. It was a 3-day sale that took place at the old Northside Library. So it was at the Elmore Square Shopping Center. They raised $37,299 in 3 days of sales out there. So I'm sure some of you might have seen that, isn't it? Yes. You might have seen that letter to the editor yesterday with some very positive comments about the sites for the sale. Currently, the plan that Friends have is still to have the fall sale at Gordon Avenue, but again, we'll see how that progresses as they look at COVID mitigation.
It was nice to have a very open space, even though they didn't have like every single category that they normally have.
Yes.
The parking better too.
Yeah, parking is easy, but it just, with how things are right now, you could space yourself if you were feeling claustrophobic. No, it was nice to be in a big open space.
It was great, and it was very accessible. It was a great job organizing by Peter Mano and the whole Friends board, which includes Wendy. So they worked really hard to get to that point, and it was a big success.
Yeah.
And also, in just nationally, companies are pushing back their October in-person back to the office thing. And so that's when the sale is. So keeping with, the fall sale. we might, I hope they will
I'm sure
consider it,
that-
and I'll take the comments.
The
but-
Friends Board will
Yeah,
discuss.
but I think we need to consider that as well. I'm good at being way more comfortable just in a regular, anytime, but especially now.
It was a resounding success though, so there was some,
Yeah.
they didn't really know going into it, how many people would be there and how much they would sell, so they really did an amazing job. Great friends to have. Part of the JMRL's Centennial work, about 100 years of library service in the Charlottesville area is the Centennial Exhibit that's now up on the third floor of the Central Library. So this actually came out of the working group that looked at the Swanson court case room cleaning. And it came up from a member of the public who learned a lot about the history of JMRL and said, well, it would be great to see that in one place. So there now is a semi-permanent exhibit up on the third floor of the Central Library, and then one more that's inside the Swanson room itself that just tells the story of the Swanson case. So initially there was going to be an opening for that, maybe next month. Looks like we might try to wrap that into the opening of the film that Lorenzo is working on. So it would be like, come see the exhibit and then enjoy the film, whether that film would be at the Central Library or remote or someplace downtown. And we're still working on, but it looks like early October.
And is it done?
The film is not done, no. In fact, he was filming last week at Nelson and I think he was at Scottsville as well. So he's wrapping up, but still getting some footage at this point. I sent around something about the Build America's Libraries Act. We did get some good news in Virginia that Senator Kane is a co-sponsor of this bill. So our local senator is really pushing for this, which is great for Virginia libraries. I submitted the Central Library test case to the American Library Association as a potential example of what funds could be used how based on our conversations last week. Here's where we are, this is the type of thing that would really put a shot in the arm towards this project. So I'll continue to send you all information about this. If you haven't actively advocated on your own, I'll send it to you, send it to the friends. Some of it's so easy these days, you click the button and send a little email saying, yes, I support this, but it's $5 billion could be available nationally for bricks and mortar building libraries, which really could be a huge shot in the arm, and the biggest since Carnegie, basically, for buildings. Last note, next week I will be away from JMRL for the first time since the pandemic. So, I'll be locally in town Monday and Tuesday, so available if anybody needs anything after that. My sister's getting married, we're having a family deal out of state, so just to let the board know that I will be slow to respond.
Nobody call David on Monday or Tuesday.
Don't call me when I'm
Don't
supposed
call
to
him on
be
Wednesday.
reading.
No. Leave him alone for the
No,
week.
just don't call him at all next week. Let him have
Thank you,
all
Lisa.
off.
It is-
Golly,
it is the
don't call
first
him
week
at
off.
all.
I am available. That's all I have to report.
Thank you very much, David. Let's see, other matters. Looks like we have the same folks who were here before, but we went through public comment kind of quick. Is there anybody who wants to say anything before we move on to the end of our meeting here? Okay. Future agenda items. We'll have the conversation about committees. We will, what do you want to do for a walkthrough on the policy if it is ready next month? That's a long document.
Yeah, I suppose, I don't know, what do you think, David?
Or the handbook, rather.
Would it go in handouts? Would it go in, it's an email
That
beforehand?
would be nice, an email before.
Yeah, I think that if it's ready, so we would need a few weeks, to get it ready. We've got a meeting coming up,
Soon.
but not till the week after next, basically. So that's
Yeah.
basically would give us one meeting in order to get a final draft version out, and
Right.
Megan did a lot of work on it, so it looks really
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So I think likely it would be sharing something out via email with both the board and the staff towards the end of August, so that you would have time to review it before the, and maybe it would just be an introduction in August. and
Yeah,
then-
Google Docs link maybe.
Yeah.
I'd like if we could plan for just a little bit of a presentation on it. I know that it's a long document and we don't want to spend the whole meeting reading through it in detail, but if you could maybe synthesize a little bit of how this came to be, though I think we're relatively familiar with that, but
Yeah, absolutely. If we can make that a continuing ed, basically, like here's the process.
sure.
regardless of whether or not it's quite ready for prime time, we could still go through, like, here are
Yeah.
the documents.
Here are the chapters.
Where we had the most discussion.
Yeah,
Does that sound helpful if we make continuing ed for next month, discussion about employee handbooks and how this process came to where it is before we move into the discussion of it later in the agenda? Lisa, Kathy?
I don't have anything to add.
Okay,
I would say, yeah, discussion of the details may not be appropriate for August,
I did get that.
just because if
Okay.
you get it, it's gonna be a week or less before. So the intro and then maybe pencil in a September
we bring the feedback
more
in
discussion,
September.
yeah.
Okay,
I think it might be more realistic.
And I think that would also give us a chance to get at least some staff feedback in.
Exactly.
Before we start discussing.
okay. That sounds good.
I
So,
always appreciate getting something, however much ahead of time, but emailed, so in my free time, I can devote feeling pressed.
okay, so we will make that continuing education for next month and we will hold off on any discussion of it. Let's see, the other agenda item, we will go through those self-evaluations next month. So look forward to seeing everybody's comments on that. Is there anything that anybody else would like to add for agenda next month?
There'll be a vote on the religious accommodations policy.
Yes, thank you.
And also a policy committee report, because we should have a meeting in August, right?
Okay. All right. Well, I believe that brings us to the end of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right, so moved, Jim. All in favor?
Bye.
Thank you very much. We will adjourn here at 4:32 PM. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Look forward to seeing you all next month, and I will try to reach out between now and then.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
And David, you're gonna send out the dates they decided on.
Yes, we will send out the whole schedule for everybody.